All right, today we're diving into one of the most dramatic and, let's be honest, intense narratives in all of prophetic literature, the end times. We're going to walk through the final battle, the return of a king, and the total reshaping of the world, pulling everything straight from the source texts.
So our story really kicks off with this incredibly powerful image from the book of Revelation. This quote introduces our central figure, and his arrival, well, it changes everything. That robe dipped in blood is such a loaded symbol. It points back to his sacrifice, but it also points forward to his new role as a judge. This is where the final act truly begins.
Now, here's something you might not expect. Before all the chaos and conflict erupts on earth, the narrative actually describes this huge celebration up in heaven. It's called the marriage supper of the Lamb. Think of it as this incredible, symbolic feast for the redeemed, a moment of pure joy before the final judgment begins.
Okay, so after that heavenly celebration, the whole scene shifts, and it shifts dramatically. The king returns. He descends from the heavens on a white horse, and he's not alone. He's got the armies of heaven with him. This is a total transformation, you see. He's not returning in humility this time. He's coming back as a triumphant, conquering king, ready for war.
And the way this king is described is just packed with symbolism. His title, Faithful and True, tells you exactly what he's here to do, to judge and wage a righteous war. The many crowns or diadems on his head, that signifies absolute, supreme authority. And get this, his weapon isn't a physical one. It's a sharp sword coming from his mouth, which represents his word. And finally, his identity is spelled out for everyone to see, King of Kings and Lord of Lords.
Let's shift our focus back down to earth and see how all of this is building. So while heaven's celebrating, the nations of the world are being gathered together. The texts say that demonic spirits are basically tricking the world's leaders, drawing them in all their armies to one specific place for one final showdown. And it's all centered on Israel.
The book of Joel actually gives this gathering place a really symbolic name, the Valley of Jehoshaphat. Now, you're not going to find this on Google Maps. It's not so much a literal place as it is a representation of its purpose. The name itself actually means Yahweh judges, which tells you everything you need to know. This is the spot where the nations will be judged for their hostility.
But here's the thing. This symbolic valley of judgment is also tied to a very, very real place. The book of Revelation gives this battlefield a much more famous name, one that's pretty much become shorthand for any world-ending conflict, even though it's a real location.
And of course, that name is Armageddon. It comes from the Hebrew Har Megiddo, which just means Mount of Megiddo. This is a real strategic hill in northern Israel that looks out over the huge Jezreel Valley, a plain that has seen major, history-changing battles for centuries. So this is the crucial point. This massive prophetic event is anchored to a tangible historical location.
So the world's armies all converge to attack Jerusalem, but the prophecy in Zechariah presents this incredible paradox. Jerusalem, the very target of the invasion, is going to become the very thing that destroys the invaders. It's described as a burdensome stone that crushes anyone who tries to move it, a powerful symbol of its supernatural defense.
You see, the city's defense isn't going to be conventional. It happens at the exact moment of the Messiah's physical return to earth. And his arrival is described as this world-altering event that causes these insane, cataclysmic changes to the very landscape.
Just listen to the scale of this. The prophecy says that when his feet touch the Mount of Olives, the same place he left from, the mountain literally splits in half. A massive earthquake creates a brand new valley, a path for people to escape. At the same time, the entire surrounding area is flattened into a plain, and Jerusalem itself is physically lifted up. Just incredible.
So what happens to all those armies that gathered for this epic battle? Well, this isn't some long, drawn-out war. It's over in an instant. The texts say the rebellious forces are destroyed supernaturally, by the breath of his mouth and the pure, overwhelming glory of his appearance. The victory is swift, and it is absolute.
So after that instant victory, the story takes a very solemn turn. The focus shifts to the grim aftermath. It's all about the immense scale of the destruction and the execution of divine judgment on the armies that were just defeated.
And to describe just how massive this slaughter is, Revelation uses this unbelievably powerful image of a great winepress. It pictures the rebellious nations as grapes being thrown in and crushed in the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the result is a river of blood so deep it reaches up to the bridles of the horses.
Now, just to put that ancient image into perspective for a second, A horse's bridle is about 4 to 5 feet off the ground. The text says this river of blood flows for nearly 200 miles. It's a truly staggering and horrifying image, and it's meant to convey the absolute totality of the judgment.
And you have to see the incredible contrast the text sets up here with two very different feasts. First, you have the marriage supper of the Lamb, that joyful celebration in heaven. But then, in stark contrast, you have the supper of the great God down on earth, where all the birds are called to feast on the flesh of the fallen armies, a symbol of their complete and utter humiliation and defeat.
So what happens to the ringleaders of this global rebellion? The text is very clear. The figures known as the beast, this tyrannical world leader, and the false prophet, his religious partner in crime, are captured. And they aren't just killed, they are cast alive directly into a lake of fire, which marks a final, definitive, and eternal end to their deception and their rule.
So, the final battle is over, judgment has been served, and a brand new era is about to begin. And that leaves us with a pretty profound question to think about. What does the narrative built on ultimate justice and total restoration suggest about the purpose and the final meaning of history itself?